Welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders, where we have engaging conversations about software development and cloud engineering with industry leaders and subject matter experts. These episodes are created by the Great Lakes Tech Leaders, an online community of technology practitioners. Please come join the conversation by visiting gltl.rbn.ai. Again, that's gltl.rbn.ai. Now strap in, because we're deploying to production in 3, 2, 1.
Episode of Lunch with Tech Leaders. My name is Adam Oberhausen, and I'm the Director of Cloud Architecture with Right Brain Networks. And I'm your host for today. Joining me today, as always, is software and data consultant Tom Kowalski. Say hi, Tom.
Hello.
And rounding out our co-hosts, we've got Joe Coleman. What's up, Joe?
Hey there, Adam. Thanks for the lovely intro. Just want to throw it in real quick that I'll be refereeing today's podcast here. So if you folks listening along or in the chat have any questions whatsoever, go ahead and throw them in the chat there, and I'll make sure to get them right there front and center in the discussion. So thanks so much.
Thank you. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and the future of AI. We've got a lot to cover today, so grab your lunch and buckle up. Tom, let's just get right to the intros because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. This is exciting. It's what a time to be alive. Today with us we have Shafiq Amin. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm Shafiq Amin, VP of Technology at LoadSmart. Really previously OpenDoc, and it was acquired by LoadSmart. We do kind of appointment scheduling in the cloud. But I've been kind of a techie guy since I was a teenager, like most of you probably, 15 years old, got my first modem and internet connection, dial up, and, I was hooked ever since. So I've just been recently kind of obsessed with AI, machine learning. I've been taking courses and I have a little bit of opinions on the matter. So here we are.
All right.
Great to have you, Shafiq.
Excited to have you here. And then also joining us is Lancelot Carlson. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm an entrepreneur, programmer, been a programmer for a very long time. So I've definitely messed with TensorFlow and dug into machine learning throughout my career. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at machine learning, but I've definitely done more than most people, I think. And when I see APIs that come out, I usually explore them to their limit to understand them. And I did that with OpenAI. So I know the limitations of OpenAI pretty intimately. I've been working with it at my work and other projects that I'm thinking about starting. So I definitely have some background in it.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Yeah, so Tom, this week's history lesson, AI traces back to the 1950s, right? When the field of artificial intelligence was first established. It's gone through several phases. There's a period of time where it was called the AI winter from the 70s to the 80s, where there was AI interest in AI kind of dwindled down to almost nothing. But then in recent years, because of the advances in machine learning and data processing, AI is like back, right, in a big way. So OpenAI founded in 2015, and this led to the ChatGPT. So that's kind of like just my real brief history lesson there. I think I'll just open it up with like when I heard about ChatGPT in the news. I was interested in it. I've heard of other bots in the past, but for some reason I never really tried them. But then when I logged into OpenAI and tried this thing for the first time, like I thought it was like magic. Like I can't believe how awesome this thing is. So yeah, I'll just kick it off with that, and I'm just happy to let's just open it up and see what people want to talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what Lancelot or Shafiq. What are your thoughts with it?
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone. There's like hundreds of millions of users, I think now. They've hit 100 million. It's pretty magical in some deep sense. Again, you guys probably seen chatbots, and we've been playing with them forever, but they never quite had that feeling of, there's something there. you can always kind of game it to say something stupid, or it has you can reach the limitations. You can explore the boundaries pretty quickly, and it's like, that's boring, and you just log off. But this thing has a certain kind of reach that's beyond what you're used to, and that's really really kind of it. Even though it might be a quantitative kind of leap, it really is qualitative because of that, and so people are obviously very interested.
When searching for product market fit, there's this feeling that you get when you see the user get it. And with OpenAI, it was the first time that users understood it. And no matter what Google says, like that they invented whatever language model behind it, they were not the first people to get the language model to express the English language back to a person in a way that the users get it, they get the utility. And so I think that that's where we're starting right now, is that people are now starting to understand, and that's where the revolution is coming, is that we can talk to this thing and ask it so many different. I have a really interesting example if you're curious, but
Yeah.
By all means.
On Sunday, my father, he's spiritual. My grandmother passed away about a year ago, and he was feeling feelings, and he decided to go to a psychic. It was something that my grandmother and him did on a decent basis together. So like it's kind of cathartic and whatnot. But so he went, and I've never been to a psychic, so he had recorded it, and it was really interesting to hear what a psychic sounded like. And for him, he was kind of, he was convinced at some level, some of this through his grief, the guy was manipulating him. And it was funny because and it was actually straining the marriage because something was said in the session that was not great. So we get to save the day by explaining to him what a long language model is and how it works. This is kind of where I was coming through it to try to convince him, is that it's actually, the psychic is actually using some techniques that ChatGPT is using, and it'd be really interesting to actually generate a psychic session in ChatGPT to see how closely it generates a conversation to the way that this guy is trying to manipulate your mind, because ChatGPT is using a completions API, and it's based on statistical modeling where, if you provide the letter M, it'll try to give you the most statistically relevant letter after that. You expand that out to words, and then sentences, you get context. And then so a psychic is kind of doing something similar, where it's like, if if you're more likely to be this, then I'm going to try to say a bunch of stuff and then go to the stuff that's most likely, and then kind of get you down that path. And you had to get past the ethical stuff with ChatGPT, because you had to say, tell me a story about a psychic as opposed to be a psychic, right? But it generated it, and oh my God, my dad's eyes like lit up, and he was blown away because it generated a session similar in the beginning to what this guy was doing and attempting. And I don't know. I think that's just one example of the crazy things I've done with it so far, but that was the latest like blow away thing. So
Yeah, I've
Pretty
heard
cool.
of a lot of uses. That's the first one.
Psychic
like that.
readings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
not the
the
first industry that will be disrupted by this technology.
So I don't know anything about AI or machine learning really, other than kind of high level. So I researched for the show here, and it's like apparently the transformer architecture is a deep learning model that was kind of the foundation of ChatGPT. So this transformer architecture came out in 2017, and it's kind of touches on those things you just talked about, Lance, where it's like the model is based on the idea of self-attention. So when you give it inputs, it's able to like look at each word you put into it and figure out what's the most important, or how to really understand the context of what you're asking it versus other models, which is kind of like, I don't know. Shafiq, maybe you can speak on how this model is different than other models because I'm going to botch it. But have you looked at the transformer
Yeah.
architecture and have an understanding of it? Can you explain it
Yeah.
to a layperson?
I mean, I really don't understand it at a sophisticated enough level. There really is a lot of mystery in there, but I kind of skimmed that paper. If you've heard of the paper, Attention is All You Need. That's the first paper. It came out from Google, I believe, and it describes this, architecture, this little machine, really, called a transformer that can do some cool things. It's an architecture that improves on previous architectures like the recurrent neural network that has essentially recursion, i.e., memory, to analyze relationships of inputs relative to each other. But that had some problems and it was slow, and for reasons I don't quite understand, it wasn't very feasible. So this transformer model really it was kind of combined theory and engineering to make it plausible to have something that's performant enough that you can now run on our current hardware and it will do some things like this. But yeah, that the transformer does seem to be kind of a fundamental thing. It's this little abstraction that seems like it wasn't even meant for this, perhaps. It just kind of came about, and it just happened to, people discovered that it was more awesome than it was, perhaps, and it's now just being used in a lot of places. It's kind of a general purpose little abstraction that you can plug into a lot of neural network models and have it do magical things. It is something where it's kind of like the for loop or something, or the function abstraction. In everyday programming these days, we just take functions for granted. Seems like the transformer is going to be something like that, where it's just a standard abstraction in a lot of machine learning models. Lance, I don't know if you have more input here. I haven't really dug that deep into this.
No, I think I don't really have any input. That was a good summary.
And
Yeah, I
what's
think
interesting,
what I learned about it was like it's like an unsupervised learning. So the model can like learn patterns without explicit supervision is what I found. So it's all fascinating. Like it still feels like magic to me. What did you have,
yeah.
Tom?
I'm by no means an expert. I've dabbled in this for a while. I used to do what's called neural style transfer back in the day, right? Making pet pictures look like Picasso, right, in the style of Picasso and things like that.
Cool.
But it took me days to do that, and it was expensive. What blows my mind today is I can just ask some of these, more image models to do it almost instantly, right? Within a few seconds. So yeah, that, like you were saying, right, where it's incorporating what you put into the models that it already has. That kind of blows my mind, and how it does that. So yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
There's two limits on that I found. One is getting it to write text that you want it to write. Sometimes it writes like a gibberish, like kind of on a logo or something, and it's like, how do you get it to like? It doesn't let you just change the text. You have to use Photoshop or something to bring
Yeah.
it back to. And then the other funny thing I found was the 6-finger problem. Have you seen that? Where it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, AI thinks humans have 6 fingers on each hand, and it
Yep.
just.
There's other subtle things where you'll see like there's the different the fork on your glasses, like one side's different than the other, or like just strange things that like just don't quite match up with we're talking about the photo AI generators right there at this point. So
Yeah, with the
so
self-attention thing, it seems like self-attention means that you can have input tokens or words, let's say, relate to themselves, and the model can learn, which the weights of which words relate to other words in the input and by how much, and which ones are important. Again, details I'm not quite sure about, and I really do want to dig deeper into this, but that seems to be the magic there, the self-attention thing. You can extract what's most important about an input sequence without having to pre-program that. And so that lets essentially lets the model understand context well enough that it sounds, that feels like human-like, because humans can understand, from the context of the sentence, what words are less important than others, and which pronouns refer to what nouns, etc.
What I find interesting about what you said too is that people get frustrated with ChatGPT sometimes when they don't give a good enough prompt. And prompt engineering is a whole thing. It's very important. And I liken it to when you're actually having a conversation with somebody. Like if you ask them a question and your question isn't good, it's too vague. Like ChatGPT is going to do something similar. It's not going to be able to provide, if it doesn't have enough context, it's not going to be able to provide a great answer.
A great point, Lance. I'm glad you brought it up because like I use this thing every day. I love it. And I found like I've developed the prompt skill to the point where I can sometimes I still give it like, a question that's not a thought that's not fully fleshed out and it doesn't give me what I want. And I know, okay, well, I have to go back to that prompt and like modify it so that the model understands what I'm asking. Just like a real conversation. Like I can't just throw out a couple words and expect you to give a coherent reply, right? So it's a new skill, and I think it's cool to see my personal development in that skill.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, in software development, a lot of it is how good can you search Google, right? Like how good are your search queries and prompts in there? And it's kind of evolving now to the prompt engineering, right? What do you feed the AI to get back what you're looking for? And
I use it for coding a lot too.
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
I love it's so weird. Like I feel like I'm more creative now because I can explore things quicker. And I'm not stuck with just Google. I can search this thing too to think about more abstract concepts that I'm trying to implement something, and there was just this one thing that I didn't think about the way to implement it, and then I can go through a couple suggestions, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this would be a great way to implement this, and then I don't feel like that's replacing me as a programmer. Like I feel like it's kind of it's almost like just a more advanced vehicle, going from a manual transmission to an automatic transmission.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an accelerator.
one of the best tweets I heard recently was the hottest new programming language these days is English. And I think that's what's happening. I mean, we just kept increasing the abstraction level of programming languages, right, from assembly, and now we're essentially at English. It's not perfect, obviously, but you can sort of program in English, and the better you are, you can't get away from the fact that you need to express yourself clearly and accurately, right, and precisely. That's never going to go away, but it gets easier and easier to use, something. And now the language is English. As a matter of fact, I saw some project which is kind of mind blowing, but really cool concept. Some companies actually bootstrapped and trying to do English as backend. There's an entire SaaS offering where you just, essentially program backends APIs in English, and they'll just spin up APIs for you automatically, which is pretty mind blowing. But it's based all on this stuff.
That's pretty cool. I would imagine that they have to make sure that the temperature, like that would be one of the biggest things that I would want to make sure people understand is that there's a temperature component to the playground if people have played around with the playground, but it defaults to 0.7, but for anything like business logic-y, I would want it to be temperature to be 1, I would imagine. Like,
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, you lost
what's
me,
the
Lance.
temperature?
What's the temperature?
Some kind of business speak. I don't know. I'm not familiar with.
if you go to the playground, the openai.com, the beta.openai.com/playground, if you've used that.
Oh, I haven't. Okay.
Yeah, so like what I'm referring to is the temperature dial on that.
And what does it mean?
What does that input do?
What does the temperature mean?
It's like it's allowing for variance and randomness.
Okay.
So I have to imagine that like when you're doing business logic, you
Right.
don't want it to be more. It's kind of almost like a creative dial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Make sure you give a consistent response. 1, 0.7, vary it up a little bit. But
Yeah, so it's kind of a determinism dial, perhaps. So you can get
Yeah.
determinism.
So I think there's still a place in society for us engineers because we still have to wire up the code to make it do things. But like, I mean,
For now.
for now. Like I'm just
Yeah.
thinking like I've got to drop Star Trek: The Next Generation when you got the holodeck and you just go in there and you tell the computer what you want, and it just creates
Yeah.
any program, any any environment you want just through verbal commands. And I just think like that's it's like we're definitely like moving in that direction. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but how many programmers do you need? There is kind of a real threat, I suppose. I mean, as always, technology is always evolving, and you have to kind of adapt. There's no escaping that either. But it could be that you just need fewer and fewer programmers, and that could be a reality that's somewhat difficult for society to adapt to. I'm not sure how that will shake out, but it is a serious concern I can see. I mean, because a few days ago, I gave ChatGPT code from work, and I said, review this code. I did a PR review, and it was almost flawless. And usually, that's something I would do with a coworker or something. That's that is replacing some human labor there
how
in a very
many
real.
how big was like the block of code you had to look at? Just
Not
curious.
very big, yeah, a couple
Yeah.
hundred lines of code, but I mean,
That's
it was almost perfect. I would just accept it as is, if it,
mhm.
it came from a coworker. So that is concerning people, again, and not just programmers, artists everywhere. If you want a logo these days, you can get it in 5 seconds, and it's decent. Maybe it's not perfect, but you no longer have to commission an artist to do this, and on and on. And music is I'm sure now can be auto generated to kind of exquisite levels of quality, etc.
So you brought up something pretty interesting that I've heard in the chats and the Twitters, of pasting code into it and asking, are there any concerns of like sharing IP from the code that you're writing and
Right.
what you're working on? And yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of a corporate issue. If you've heard of the, what was it, the Copilot plugin from Microsoft, VS Code. So that's potentially sharing code in a way that's maybe gray area in legality. It's not clear in terms of licenses and whatnot because you're copy pasting other people's codes in snippets, perhaps. So our company, for example, LoadSmart decided no Copilot as a policy, and it feels weird because that's kind of it might become a handicap at some point to say that, but for right now, we don't want to touch the legal issues. So yeah, there's implications like that. I'm not sure what that means, but that's going to disrupt again a lot of stuff because by definition, you're training on the free and open source code out there on the web. That's where a lot of the training data comes from. So if if there's some licensing attached to that, what do you do with that? It's not clear.
Yeah. I think the AI is inevitable, right? I've heard of school districts already banning ChatGPT, which I find laughable. Like, okay, like yeah, you might be able to ban it on your network at the school, but like the kid's just going to go home and use it. So I think I'm actually kind of surprised that companies are already not allowing things like Copilot and ChatGPT to help assist with the workflow. I think there is something to be said about putting in your code, your proprietary code into it, because who knows what they do with that? Does that then become part of the model it learns on? But I would think that most of the time, if you're just putting in like a snippet, like in not like your whole IP of a project, right? Like it's just a snippet. So anyway, yeah, what
Right.
other ethical things are we concerned about with AI in general?
I actually think that the real sauce, the real interesting, maybe it's a threat to programmers, but if you source the entire project into the AI, it'll have more context about like, is this a Ruby on Rails application? Is this
Right.
MVC architecture? Is this a game? And then it can really start to like just not run an auto completion API against that, and then you're really just speaking English in your comments or whatever, in maybe a high level way, and then it's just then you get to like pick like, okay, well, I want this and this and this, and it kind of helps you with the decisions as you go along, and you can just auto generate an entire project.
Yes, some of the things that I've been seeing is it's a different licensing models depending on how much you pay. right? These free ones, yeah, anything you put in there it belongs to us, and we can use
Yep.
it. And then some of more expensive licensing models is okay. You own what you have, and we can separate it. So I feel like that's where kind of the things are going with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they do say, disclaimer, don't put anything sensitive into ChatGPT. They have that warning when you sign up.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's fair game, and they're using it for retraining. It's pretty obvious. There's reinforcement, this human reinforcement learning happening here in the loop. You can thumbs up, thumbs down responses, and that all feeds back into the model, make it better.
I mean,
When they
it's a little different, but I feel like it does relate back to searching, right? If you're putting any data you're putting in there, right? If you're searching at Google, Google owns it. There's different caveats to that, but it's it's that same idea. You're giving in your data, that you're putting into a search on. It allows you to put a bit more data in now with the prompt engineering. But yeah, I feel like it's the same legal battle, the same data privacy, just an evolution of it.
Yep.
So when they make the API available, which I think it's in beta now, so right now, the ChatGPT doesn't really have. It's just doesn't really have a personality. Are people gonna tweak when it becomes an open API? Are they gonna make it like a bot that is have personalities, or what do they do? How are you gonna commercialize this thing beyond
Yeah.
generic ChatGPT prompts? Can I make a bot that only is specialized in making cocktails or something and has a sassy attitude? Is that a
Yeah.
product someone's going to offer?
That
Yeah,
can be
Lance, I'm curious
today.
about. Yeah, I'm
Uh,
curious about what you've played with, but yeah, there is an API today which is the fine tuning. So you can fine tune a specific model from OpenAI. So you can take their Da Vinci model, which is I think what GPT is based on. I'm not sure, but it's
Yeah.
their latest uh, language model, and you can fine tune it with your own data.
'Cause I think
And-
that's when you get into the ethical stuff of these bots could be programmed to manipulate us like a fortune teller or something. Lance,
Sure.
what's your take on that?
the fine tunings API is not the route I would go.
Okay,
There's
interesting.
there's an embeddings API,
Okay.
and the fine tunings is more for making the thing itself behave differently. So if you're trying to create Chat GPT model DaVinci 004, you would use the fine tunings. So it's actually
Okay.
weird that it exists because I think they might deprecate it from people's general use case because it's confusing. But it's the embeddings API that if you're trying to put more uh, data context and more data into it, so data context being some character that understands a longer context of what you're talking about, and then larger amounts of data, like maybe you want to put your whole knowledge base behind it. Um, you would use the embeddings API. You pull out a vector, you store that in a vector database, and then you search against that vector database. When the vector that's most closely related to the context that you're wanting comes out, you push that data back into the prompt, and then you got what you want, and then you can start to build personalities and stuff.
Interesting.
What's
Yeah.
interesting too is that there's a difference between that and your own private information, and then there's also um, you can actually create characters today with the prompt. You've done this before, right? Where you
Yeah,
just
give
said,
me a pirate voice or something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what you can do already without having to do that. So if you go to character.ai, they have a bunch of examples that are fun.
That's cool. So yeah, so if I understand you correctly, Lance, it seems like fine tuning is to actually change the model. You're retraining the model itself, but embeddings is really just loading more data context.
Exactly.
Okay.
You want it's if you play with the fine tunings API, it's at least for me, it was a waste of time for what I
Okay.
was for.
Good
If
to
we're
know.
trying to create a person,
Yeah.
if you're wanting to create a bot, the embeddings API is more. You're almost recreating Watson. It's what's the most relevant thing that I should pull from the data set of knowledge that I want, as opposed to I'm just and putting my giant thing into this fine tunings and fine tuning it.
Cool. Good to know.
Well, we're getting close to time. Tom, you got any last questions you want to bring up before I
I
send us
think.
off?
Well, I think we should talk about what are the fun things. What are people doing with this? I know we kind of did some high level and programming, but what? So I'm interviewing right now in my career, and I've never actively searched for another opportunity, and it's been very helpful in asking interview questions and. They want you to respond using like the STAR methodology. So, I'm relating my experiences to how it would model it in a STAR response, and it's been great, and the different questions. How else have you all been using it, and what's some things you haven't thought of?
I have promoted this many times, but I actually use it a lot to prepare for this show, right? Help me get an itinerary for a podcast, give me some talking points, conversation starters. It's just like a great way to kind of generate some research for the podcast here. Something that was normally taking me anywhere from a half day to a day to prepare, like I can probably do in like under an hour or two now, with depending on how much time I want to spend on getting ready for the show. But I think it's really cool and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I have a ChatGPT tab open at all times. So I'm just using it for whatever I'm working at the moment. One cool thing is like proofreading code. That's really been a thing for my machine learning homework. A lot of times you feed it to the grader or whatever, and the error messages you get back are awful. There's somewhere deep in the stack. You don't understand what's going on. Copy paste the code, put it in ChatGPT. Hey, what's wrong with this code? And it'll say, oh, you missed this or that, or it'll be better if you change this to this. And it's usually right, not all the time. So the code review is a big one that I really enjoy. Another one is summarizing books. You could just say, give me a summary. Give me a 300-word summary of XYZ book, and it's basically perfect. you really can't do much better than that.
Yeah. The other thing I'm doing, Tom, is like using it to help me with like LinkedIn posts for my professional network, like trying to get some meaningful content. And it's just like it's an idea accelerator, right? Instead of like kind of banging my head on a notepad trying to figure out what to type, I just like can put in some general ideas and say, help me write a LinkedIn post that talks about AWS tagging, for example, right? And it just kind of gives you some stuff to start, right? It gets you like 70% of the way there, and then you just gotta kind of finish it off. How about you, Lance?
Okay.
Anything fun you're doing with it?
It's funny. A couple of things you don't want to do right now is math. It's right now. They've released some updates where they claim that math is good, but I was giving it some basic logic problems, and it was just like not giving the right answer. So avoid math for now. One of my favorite things that I found was, besides the psychic thing, was my wife and I were wanting to watch a Star Trek TNG episode. We were just feeling that, we've seen every episode, but so I just basically instead I had it generate a TNG episode for me, and it came out, and it was like it blew me away how good it was, and it actually like fulfilled the same the need, and I was able to finish it in a lot less of the time. So it's like a time saver because I don't have to watch shows anymore. I can just generate a new episode. It's like just tack it on to the end of the season.
Did you and your wife do like a table read, like you were
Yeah.
Picard and she was Riker?
You need
That's
a war,
funny.
give me a call.
I've seen the like the Seinfeld,
Yeah.
show about nothing. Yeah, where it's constantly 24/7 generating. Like it's an episode of Seinfeld, constantly going. Which
I heard it went naughty though because they had to
It
like
did.
they ran out of
shut it down.
API calls, and so they had to switch the AI model, and then it went down a dark path.
That's like the Microsoft when they released theirs. What was it?
Yeah.
Tina or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that got bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. I wanted to thank the guests for showing up. Great conversation. I think we're going to have more talks about ChatGPT and AI. I think it's a really engaging topic. We are like on the cusp of just like a paradigm shift. I think I've never been so excited about a new piece of technology in my life. So we're definitely going to talk more about this. I want to thank Shafiq, thank Lancelot, Tom, Joe, everyone in the audience for sitting in, and we'd love to have you join us next week, where we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of using feature flags. So as always, we'll have some expert guests, and hope you guys come check it out. So lunch is over. Let's get back to work.
Back to
Thanks, guys.
work.
Take it easy.
See ya.
And,
Thank you.